We talk a lot about being authentic as you build your brand, but do you really understand what that means? I recently had a interview with Steve D. Sims, who is one of my favorite people because he is so authentically Steve. If you gave me one of his social media posts, I could probably pick it out from a crowd and tell you that is Steve Sims, whether it's his events that he hosts or his speaking on stage or a simple post on Facebook. He has a character about him that is unmistakable. Now, we talked in this episode about how to build your personal brand, and one of the things that Steve shared really stood out to me. So I wanted to share it with you in this highlight episode where Steve talks about being impossible to misunderstand. Whether you are just starting out in business or you're not even a business owner, like every individual has a brand. There is a representation of you out in the world of how people perceive you based on their interaction with you that is ultimately your brand. And being intentional about cultivating that, I think, is so undervalued, and making sure that you're authentic to it, that you understand who it is that you want to be known as. Because I think for a long time, there's been an epidemic in the online business and online marketing space where it worked for this person. So give me the formula. I'm going to do it the way you did it. Say it the way that you say it, because that is going to sell my course. That's going to sell my membership. That's the thing. People don't realize that it worked for that person because it aligned with their unique brand, their own authenticity. And so when you do it, it feels incongruent. It feels off. It doesn't feel like something I can trust. And yet we don't take the time to really figure out and test, because we're not in it for the long game. We're in it for the quick win, right? So we want the shortcuts. We won't take the time to test and go, what does it look like for me to authentically sell this product? What does it look like for me to speak on stage, right? You work with a lot of speakers, getting them booked on stages. But what is me being on stage? How does that look different than Steve being on stage?
And the trouble is that stage can literally just be around the breakfast table conversing with your husband, your wife, your partner. So in today, we don't have to look at it as being on the Madison Square Garden stage. The stage can be delivering a Monday morning meeting or just delivering a proposal. We've got a situation. I remember when I got into speaking, and I really didn't want to get into speaking, but I realized it was the best way for me to actually populate my message and to get followers that understood me. Because for an hour, I've got your entire attention, you know? So I realized that very early on, and I worked for it. But a friend of mine is a comedian. He's not very funny, so he needs to get another job. But I remember him talking to me about my speaking. And he was actually at an event where I spoke. And he said, there's two things you need to know before you get on that stage. He said, one, and everyone knows this. I could ask you, and you're a seasoned speaker, so you're going to come out with the answer. You're going to go, know your audience. Okay? Everyone knows that answer. If you're getting on stage, know your audience. Okay? The second thing I'd never heard of before, he said, know the temperature of the room. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, know the mood that they're in. He said, as a comedian and not an A-list comedian, I would have my setup. The person would go on before me, suck or say something racial or sexist or just get booed off the stage. Now I'm walking onto a very hostile room. Now they want to be there to laugh, but now they're in a bad mood. So I've got to work to get them back up to ground zero so I can take them from there. But he said, you got to know the temperature of the room. Now, if you think about today, especially post-COVID, Trump, the COVID vaccines, we're now in a political year. We don't trust anything. The temperature of the room today, i.e. anyone looking at the internet, is we don't trust what we first see. But if we're real, if we've got crystal clarity on, hey, this is who I am, people can make a decision. I believe there's three kinds of people in the planet, okay? And this podcast will validate that. It will prove me right. There are people on this podcast that I guarantee you love me. I'm not being egotistical, but I guarantee you there's people listening to this going, that guy, that he gets it. He's right. I really like his spirit. And they're on my side. They're Team Sims. All right. Guarantee you on this podcast, there are people that are probably already left or maybe just like begrudgingly listening because they like you. And they're listening to me going, I can't understand what he's saying. he's too shouty. Look at him, he looks ugly. Oh God, he thinks he's. They don't like me. They are not Team Steve. And that's fine. Okay. You can't attract everyone. When you try to attract everyone, you attract no one. But those people that are already camp sims, I'm fine with. But there's a third group of people, and that group you've created. Not you, Shana, but the people listening to they've created because they've tried to woolly that copy. They've tried to not stand up for what they believe in. They've tried to make sure that they don't trigger anybody. They're trying to be so vanilla that people are now sitting on the fence going, I'm not sure about this person. He's trying to tell. And like you were saying before, they've taken the cookie cutter mold of what worked for Hermosi or Ryan or Perry Belcher or anyone like this. And they've gone, I'm going to work that out. But they're not those people. So they're trying to wear a suit that's not cut for them. And as human beings, our gut is actually very, very intelligent. We don't trust our eyes anymore. CGI is fantastic, okay? We don't trust our ears. Auto-tune is absolutely fantastic. But you know that moment you get something in the pit of your stomach and you go, I'm not sure about this person. There's something that's just not right. I don't know what it is, but I got a nagging feeling. All of those things are called instincts, and it's what's kept us alive for millions of years. Start trusting them, and as a person, start realizing that they're getting stronger and they're becoming in control. So I want to say things. I'm not trying to shock, be inappropriate, scare anyone, but I do want myself to be impossible to misunderstand. So you can make the decision, camp sims or no thank you sims.
Yeah, impossible to misunderstand. And we talk about this a lot with community building, but I encourage people that their community strategy should be the same. People teach all the time that community is about acceptance and kindness. And I'm like, no, that's the exact opposite of a strong community. A strong community has a very clear mission, purpose, and cause, very clear culture, beliefs, behaviors, and boundaries. And we define them so clearly that you feel like you're supposed to be a part of that community before you ever join. You're like, well, of course I need to be in the distillery because I am that type of person. My people are there. I need to be there with my people. The community's job is to convince you and to form you into that kind of person. It's to wave the flag to say, we're over here. If you're like us, we're over here. And guess what? If you're not like us, you're welcome to not walk through this door. And if you get here and you thought, well, maybe I want to be like them, and then you get in and realize you're not like them, you're welcome to walk right back out the door. But we're not going to shift to accommodate and appease you and your desires.